Excellent. So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm an Inspire volunteer, so and I've never done this before, so please be kind. So I'm Claire. It's really nice to meet you all. So this is the third novel by Caz Frear. I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but and it concerns the adventures of DC Cat Kinsella, crime novel. Caz Frear was discovered, in quotes, by Richard and Judy in their search for a bestseller competition in 2017. And apparently she already had ideas for the next two novels. So this one's the third in the row. And it sounded like she had a plot set out for the first three. So we've gone straight to the end of the series on this one. It's been reviewed by some big names, I noticed. So authors such as Marion Keyes and Anne Cleves and Linda LaPlante, all giving it rave reviews. And if you bought the physical copy, there's a couple of pages worth of good reviews on this story. So for me, it had a lot of hype around it, and I was looking forward to reading it. But I'm going to hand over to you guys now, because I'm really interested to hear what you thought of it. So who would like to go first?
I'll go first, I think. Yeah. I thought it was very complex, and let's just say I was glad I read the first one in the series before I read this one, because there was a lot of elements involved in the plot, which meant that if I hadn't read the first one, I really wouldn't have understood the protagonist's background plot, really. So yeah, a little bit frustrating for people that haven't. I don't know what everybody else thinks about that.
Yeah, I actually put that on a review, that actually it took a long time to get in because of this backstory, which wasn't actually fully sort of explained. If you hadn't read the other two, you're trying to think, well, where does that come in? You know, why are we jumping to her father and things like that? Yes, it was very difficult. I would say that's the problem.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really realise it was a series when I read it until I finished it. And, I was taking it as a standalone. I knew that there would be something, because there was a lot that wasn't explained. But like the main case, I assume, was mentioned in depth in another novel. But we were jumping straight into the actions, and without giving anything away, it was very, Alexander said, it is very complex. But actually, if you see it as just a novel in and of itself, it's a very good crime one, because it does keep you guessing right up until like the end third of the novel. Like for the first 2/3, I was like, I have no clue what's going on, but there were clues the whole way along to kind of lead to the conclusion.
Alex, did you say you'd read the first two then, or just the first one?
Just the first one, because
right.
I read the first one because I always had to do an online interview with her, so I thought I better read the first one just to make sure I've got it covered. Yeah. No, actually, it was the second one. I get myself mixed. So I've read the second and third, but not the first one. Yeah, complicated to read the series without having read all of them, I think. But it's a good job there's at the moment there's only 3, because it made it a lot easier.
Yeah, I think it was a disappointment for me, really, that, because I was waiting for this big reveal about Marianne and what's happened with her father and all these things which she kept alluding to, and it never happened. And it's not until you click on to at the end of the novel, a brief description of, I think it's a Stone Cold Heart or something like that, that you realise that you should have read that first. So yeah, that was a big disappointment. And The other thing I had a problem with, I don't read a lot of crime fiction, but I felt that the character of Cat Kinsella wasn't at all well drawn. She's supposed to be a sort of millennial living in London with an Irish heritage. None of this came out in the way she spoke. To me, it was like a first-person narrative with a lot of cliched sort of observations. Reminded me of Philip Marlowe, Raymond Chandler's famous PI, coming out with all these really sort of corny similes, like saying the front room was as big as a small aircraft hangar, and that language just didn't ring true for this character. She didn't. This character of Cat. I was looking forward to reading this novel because I thought it'd be interesting to see a sort of focus on a female detective. I mean, I know there are some, but I haven't really come across any in print. And the character was just not well built at all, I felt. And in fact, as we've said, there are a lot of characters introduced who are not drawn at all for us because we haven't met them. So I thought it had a lot of weaknesses, and I was very disappointed with it, I'm afraid.
I mean, I read a lot of crime novels, and I wouldn't put it as my top crime book by any means. I didn't think the character of the police detective was that credible. You know, she had this dubious background with his father. Well, would the police employ somebody like that? And also, would within the police, she was fairly low down in the police sort of hierarchy, would she be allowed to do some of the things that she was doing? Wouldn't she sort of be given the more mundane work to do? So some of it didn't quite ring true.
The reason that she's that low is because she would be doing that job. If it was anybody higher, they would be doing all the paperwork. That's the reason that she's been chosen for that rank.
You really think so?
I know so.
Oh,
yeah.
Right, okay.
Through reading several books and speaking to authors, there's a lot of people that have now chosen to focus their characters on that rank because they actually do that job at that level. Because, you know, on TV, when you get like your detectives, your DIs, in reality, their job is paperwork based. Not, they control what everybody else does, and the role that she's in, she would be the woman that was going around and doing everything that the DI was telling her to do. Yeah.
Okay.
Field based, yes.
Yeah, I think it was just really interesting to kind of see all the different things that they had in a backstory. But to be completely honest, the narrator didn't need to be her. Like she could have just been a character in the story.
I agree.
Like it could have just been a third person narrative. Like it seemed like almost the narrator was watching the scene and going, Cat did this, and you know, all the different characters were doing this. It wasn't like she was feeling any emotion. They didn't show that through her character at all. And I guess it was just like I was waiting for her to go, you know, this was my father, and have some emotional tie to it, or like a flashback or something to kind of give us a little bit more. Or like, even if it's a series, all series that I've read have had some scene where they flash back to the previous book. Like, you know, it would have been really good to have developed the character that way.
The editor normally tells them that they've got to put that in so that the book will stand on its own. I mean, if you read series, and I have read sort of other crime novels, you have the detective, but when they're explaining something that's happened, they do actually fill in the gaps a bit more about sort of what's gone on in the backstory, in case you are reading that as a standalone. and it was as if the person editing it didn't actually do that bit properly. They just assumed that you were reading that and it was the third book and you knew what was going on.
Yeah, I just kind of wish we were reading the first one as the book club.
Yeah.
I don't like reading, like, if we're doing it as a group talk, it would be so much better to be like, we knew all the intro bits about the character. Yeah. And I know that some people have read that, but as a general thing, not all of us have.
Got to make a confession though, I didn't actually get to the end of it. So I tried, I really tried, and then I gave up on chapter 9. That's as far as I got. So I got 150 pages in, and I tried probably three or four times to actually, because I really didn't want to give up on it. But I read an Amazon review, and it was 1 star, and it basically said that there's too many police characters in it, and it's all about them and their history. And I just kind of went, I agreed, and I thought, I've got to ditch it, because I just didn't have time to keep reading into something that I just didn't get into, to be honest.
Yeah, it wasn't really plot driven, and this is the thing, you know, the characters weren't developed, so they weren't driving it, and there wasn't really a lot of jeopardy or excitement in the story. I have to agree with Christine. I think if it hadn't been for the book club, I would not have finished this. I would have packed in about page 100, I think, because nothing really happened.
I might have carried on, but yeah, it was, I just, it's a shame. But what happened? Can you reveal what happened?
No, we're not allowed to.
Well, I mean, if you're really not going to, just read the last 5 chapters.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, it's all there. It's all there.
Yeah. Honestly, if you read the first 5 chapters and the last 5, you'd probably get the gist of the novel.
Okay.
For me, chapter 31 pulled it all together. Was Fellow's confession. That's probably the only chapter that I didn't want to stop reading. I was just kind of like, I just want to get through this chapter, find out everything that happens, and then but the rest of it I was quite indifferent to. It's interesting you talk about the background story. I kept thinking I'd missed something there, so I kept going back and trying. I missed a chapter or something where she tells you what happens. And then it got to the end where, you know, she decides, sorry, spoiler here, but she decides she's going to New York. And I thought, I don't really care. I got to the end and thought, I'm not really that bothered about the backstory.
I think the whole New York thing with the boyfriend, I just wished, like, the whole embarrassment she was feeling with the boyfriend and not sharing that with the, you know, her squad, that could have been like the whole, oh my God, like, that some big reaction by one of her squad members would have really been like, we would have actually have got to feel a little bit more involved in her story.
Because the boyfriend wasn't really developed at all as a character, and again, the sort of Irish heritage thing, I think he was the only character who she tried to change the speech so that it was going to sound Irish, and I thought she did that incredibly badly. So he was sort of coming up with slurry words as if that was kind of Irish, and I felt she'd sort of chosen this Irish. I don't know if she has an Irish heritage. I did notice that she's from Coventry, so doesn't really bode well. And I just felt, you know, she'd chosen to bring in Catholicism and Irishness and the heritage, and didn't reflect it at all in any of the characters or the way they spoke or the way they acted. And you know, I just felt, I don't believe that you've got Irish heritage.
I guess even if it was a modern, like, even the Irish heritage that she was trying to allude to, that's not modern like that. It felt like she was trying to base the character off something that maybe would have been 50 years ago.
The
But
be
wasn't
fair
the
to her, though,
boyfriend in the backstory?
Yeah,
Didn't he?
I think so.
You got the impression that she'd acquired the boyfriend from one of her previous cases.
Yeah,
He's
Yeah.
the brother of
Maybe
this
again it
mysterious
was
Marianne.
that's something
isn't
we
he?
were missing there. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the
Yes.
brother of
In the earlier book,
Marianne
yeah.
who died.
Yeah,
Mm.
but we don't know how.
No,
that was alluded to in the second book.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it must have been the first book they talked about it, maybe.
Yeah.
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 Who knows?
Yeah.
Just going back to character, I read on Goodreads, I read somebody's review was that they'd love to meet Cat in the pub and have a good old chinwag. And I just wondered if we could go around and say, would you like to meet Cat in the pub and have a good old chinwag, or did we just not connect with her at all? Alex, what's your view?
Well, I've read that many different crime novels that, to be honest, I like to have a chinwag with the author and see where the motivation is. It's not really the character, but it's the author, because if you know what their background is and why they've chosen for the character, it's because the character is a reflection of the author, really. And yeah.
Ian, what's your thoughts?
Well, no, because this character did not come alive for me at all, and I just didn't feel any connection, empathy, or I didn't really care about her at all, I'm afraid. So no, I'll pass on that one.
Okay. Christine, would you go for a drink with Cat in the pub?
No. While you're talking about fun, crime and everything, I think I read a few Agatha Christie's earlier in the year, and they're just so, do you know what I mean? You just slip into those and you're really interested in all the characters and you're trying to work them all out. There was no one in this book that I really was interested in. Yeah, no, sorry.
Claire, what's your thoughts on this?
No, I wouldn't go and have a chinwag with her in the pub. I might with some of the other people that were in the book, but certainly not her. But I take the point about the Agatha Christie books. They're sort of the Poirots are always standalone, aren't they? And it was this fact that you had this backstory going through them all. So no, I wouldn't go and have a chat with her in the pub, I don't think. No.
I wouldn't have a drink with her, but I would be very tempted to have a drink with either Fellows or Dyer.
Yeah,
They would be much more interesting to have a drink. I mean, yeah, their backstories and everything to do with them, I would much prefer to find out about.
Yeah. The other thing that got me was this contrivance where she got the father to do something for her. I thought that was very contrived.
To make that phone call, yeah.
Yeah. No.
Did anybody, I mean, Dyer ultimately was the murderer, did anyone buy that as a solution, or the ending of the novel, conclusion of the novel?
I certainly didn't expect it, no. Whether it's credible or not, I was past caring by that stage, I'm afraid.
Okay.
I kind of guessed it was her, but I didn't think it was Fellows because that was too obvious. I also thought it was very, very strange that Fellows confessed the way he did, that it all sort of suddenly came out, because in reality, does that actually happen? If you've held back on something all that time, do you suddenly tell the police so quickly? I mean, you might do, but
in this novel,
yeah, no, but yeah, it was obvious that it was all to do with police corruption, and I think that was what she was trying to sort of bring out more than anything else, and the fact that the police wanted a quick fix. Initially, oh yes, it was part of these other murders. Then, oh yes, we'll blame it on Fellows because, we know he's that type of person. And I think that she was trying to bring out this business of the police want to actually get through, solve as many murders as they can. They've obviously got targets. and that the targets can overwhelm the need to actually be accurate and get the right person. Yeah, I remember years ago actually working. I was a teacher, but this guy was actually teaching, but he was an ex-policeman. And I asked him, why did he leave the police force? And this was a number of years ago. And he said, because it frustrated him when they got somebody in who'd done, say, a burglary, that suddenly they wanted to pin all these other burglaries on them, because that got their
clear up rate. Yeah.
The clear up rate, yes.
Yeah.
and I, if anything, I thought that was the important thing that came out of the novel, was her sort of actually saying that, that the higher up, the people at the top were too busy, they were too interested in that to actually see what was actually going on here.
Good insight, yeah.
What about that teacher who was the sort of fake witness? Did anybody feel any sympathy for her predicament, or
I felt
was she
sorry.
credible?
I guess I felt sorry for her once they'd kind of told us what, her backstory and a little bit, but then I also thought, who makes up something like that, regardless of their situation? There are laws in place, so you don't lie to police.
Yeah.
There are, and I understand why she did it, but that also doesn't excuse the fact that she completely screwed up the police investigation.
Yeah.
But then Dyer was behind it all, so it kind of makes sense.
She was probably one of the best drawn characters in the book, I thought. And she was the only one that I kind of engaged with and had some sympathy for in the end. But everyone else was like so two-dimensional and or not even described at all, because the assumption was we'd read book 1 and 2. So if there was one character that I kind of engaged with a bit, it was probably her.
I think we're getting close to time, so I'm going to ask the final question then. So how would you rate it out of 5? And would you recommend it to anybody? We start with Alex.
That's an interesting one for me, because I don't normally use star ratings because I think they're too narrow. And I wanted to say that in the bottom of my review, because I don't like star ratings at all, because I think that they don't allow for too narrow of an opinion. So when I put my review on the website, I'm thinking, well, I've actually put 0 stars, but I wouldn't have if I'd put stars on it. It would have probably been, I'd say, 2.5 to 3.
Okay. Would you recommend it to somebody?
I would recommend it if you'd read if you got the series and you read them from start to finish, but not on its own. No.
Yeah. Cool. Christine, you didn't complete the book, but what would you recommend it?
No. Just 1 star really. And it was far too long, really. I thought there was just too many. It was all about, their backgrounds and everything. It's just like you say, if you could skip 200 pages in the middle, take that bit out maybe, and do a summary at the front, it might be better. But yeah, no, sorry, no, I wouldn't recommend it.
Fair enough. Matilda, what's your thoughts?
I'd say about 3.5. I didn't mind it. Like, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Like, it wouldn't be something I would necessarily go, oh, I'm going to read the first 2 now so that I understand the 3rd one. But it has made me want to read more crime fiction. Like, from reading it, I'm like, I want to read more of the classics and actually get more into it, because I read more like thriller type books and that are similar, but I much prefer kind of getting in the mind and trying to figure out something before it's explained. And this book didn't really do that, because I kind of guessed near the end, not exactly, but I guessed that it was someone in the police force.
Yeah. Claire, what's your thoughts?
I would give it 3. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else because I could recommend some much better crime books. And certainly, I would say if you were going to read it, you've got to read them in order.
Yeah.
And you must start with the first one, which I may well go back and do, because I think if you do read the other 2, you might actually find it a more enjoyable book. But no,
Well,
there are much better books.
Yeah, I definitely did. Having read the second.
Yeah. Ian, what's your thoughts?
Well, I couldn't give it more than 1 because of the character of Kat. I just felt she was didn't come alive at all for me. So obviously I wouldn't recommend it to anyone on that basis, I'm afraid.
Cool. I'd probably give it a 2.5, 3 maybe myself. I'm not sure I'd recommend it. I did write down, I liked that it starts with a body, so you're straight in. And it's got some strong female characters, but even though one of them turned out to be a murderer. But I did think that the characters were slightly one-dimensional, two-dimensional, just, yeah, like you say, Ian, there wasn't much going on there, which is a shame, really, because I think it's not a bad story, it just didn't really work that well. And Matilda, yes, would recommend Agatha Christie books.
Yes, I read them all in my youth, and they are good. They are better.
Okay, I will do.
They are much better.
Yes.
And you don't have to read them in order for them to stand up. And that's the important thing. In fact, if you do read them in order, you realise that Poirot was never grown old, and Miss has been around for a long time. But that doesn't matter.
Yeah, thank you.
We've not been turned off crime, we've just potentially
Just been turned off this author.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And if you want to read up-to-date crime books, I think some of the Nordic noir ones are quite good, like Joe Nesbo, or even the Millennium series, are sort of much better.
Okay.
And you don't really need to read the Joe Nesbo ones in order, because the editor does a good job in filling in the backstory. But that's probably because they're translated, so that makes a difference. The translator probably helps with the filling in the backstory. Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. That's helpful. Gives me some books to get into.
Right, well, I think we're out of time. So thank you very much for joining me today to talk through this book. I might pop in and out on some other ones in the future, so it'd be nice to chat to you again on what we're reading.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you on next month, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.